Before this video ends, you're going to understand why that quiet pressure you feel every time you open social media has nothing to do with your ability, your intelligence, or your future. Right now, without even realizing it, millions of people are waking up motivated, opening their phones, and within minutes feeling behind in life. Not because they failed, but because they compared their real, unfinished journey to someone else's edited highlight. If you've ever questioned your progress, doubted your timeline, or wondered why everyone else seems so far ahead while you're working just as hard, this message is for you. This isn't about quitting social media or blaming technology. It's about seeing the illusion clearly, understanding how it's affecting your mindset, and learning how to take your confidence back. Stay with me because by the end of this video, you won't just feel inspired, you'll feel grounded. You'll stop chasing other people's milestones and start respecting your own process. What you're about to hear may challenge the way you think about success, comparison, and progress, but it might also be the shift that finally sets you free from the feeling of being behind. Social media shows highlights, not real life. And this distinction is one of the most misunderstood truths of the digital age. What people share online is a carefully selected version of their lives, not the full picture. Every post is a decision to show success, happiness, progress, beauty, confidence, or celebration. Rarely do people post confusion, self-doubt, financial stress, loneliness, rejection, or the long stretches of effort where nothing seems to be working. Over time, this creates a distorted reality where it looks like everyone else is constantly winning while you are the only one struggling. Behind every polished photo or success announcement is a story you don't see. The years of learning, the mistakes, the fear of failure, the sacrifices, the moments where quitting felt easier than continuing. Social media removes context and compresses time. Someone's 10-year journey gets reduced to a single post, and your brain processes it as if that success happened overnight. This leads to unrealistic expectations about how fast life is supposed to move and how easy success is supposed to feel. Another layer of this illusion is emotional filtering. People naturally want to be seen positively, so they share moments that validate them. This doesn't make them dishonest, but it does make the platform incomplete. When you consume that incomplete picture daily, your mind fills in the gaps incorrectly. You assume confidence instead of insecurity, ease instead of effort, happiness instead of complexity. You start believing that struggle is a personal flaw rather than a normal part of growth. This constant exposure trains your brain to equate visibility with value. If progress isn't posted, it feels like it doesn't count. If effort isn't applauded, it feels wasted. But real growth rarely announces itself. It happens in private decisions, boring routines, uncomfortable discipline, and repeated failure. The most important chapters of your life will likely never be shared online, and that's not a weakness. It's reality. When you forget that social media is a highlight reel, you start measuring your life against edited moments instead of real standards. You judge yourself harshly for not being where someone else appears to be, without realizing you are comparing two completely different realities. One is lived in full with all its ups and downs. The other is curated, filtered, and optimized for attention. The danger isn't social media itself, but believing that what you see there represents the whole truth of life when it never does. Comparison on social platforms creates a false timeline of success that quietly reshapes how people judge their own lives. When you scroll through social media, you are exposed to hundreds of milestones in minutes, promotions, businesses launched, weddings, luxury purchases, fitness transformations, and viral wins. Your brain processes all of these events as if they are happening at the same stage of life, even though they belong to people with different backgrounds, ages, resources, and starting points. This collapses reality into a single imagined race where everyone seems ahead and you feel late. This false timeline convinces you that success has an expiration date. If you don't achieve certain outcomes by a specific age or season, you start believing you missed your chance. You begin to rush decisions, chasing achievements, not because you're ready, but because you're afraid of falling behind. This pressure doesn't come from your own values. It comes from watching others hit milestones that were never meant to be yours at that moment. Life becomes reactive instead of intentional. Social media also hides the sequence of events that lead to visible success. You see the outcome, but not the order. You don't see how many failed attempts came before the win, how many pivots happened behind the scenes, or how long someone stayed stuck before things finally worked. Without that context, success looks linear and predictable, when in reality it is messy, delayed, and deeply personal. This makes your own progress feel wrong simply because it doesn't match the illusion of speed you're constantly consuming. Another problem with comparison is that it shifts your focus away from growth and toward ranking. Instead of asking whether you're learning, improving, or moving closer to your goals, you start asking where you stand compared to others. This creates anxiety even when you are making progress, because there will always be someone further ahead in some area of life. Comparison turns success into a moving target that can never be reached. Over time, living inside this false timeline disconnects you from your own path. You stop trusting your instincts and start measuring your worth through other people's achievements. You forget that success isn't a single moment or age-based checkpoint, but a series of decisions made consistently over time. Everyone's timeline unfolds differently, shaped by choices, circumstances, and seasons that can't be replicated or rushed. When you step out of comparison, you regain control of your pace and allow your life to unfold in a way that actually fits who you are and where you're going. Algorithms profit from your insecurity and attention, and understanding this changes how you see social media entirely. These platforms are not neutral tools designed to support your growth or happiness. They are businesses built on one core objective, keeping you engaged for as long as possible. The longer you stay, the more ads you see, and the more valuable your attention becomes. To achieve that, algorithms study what triggers emotional reactions, especially the ones that make you pause, scroll, compare, and doubt yourself. Content that sparks insecurity performs extremely well. Posts that show extreme success, perfect bodies, luxury lifestyles, and rapid transformations grab attention faster than ordinary realistic progress. When you interact with that content, even subconsciously, the algorithm learns that it has power over you. It then delivers more of the same, creating a feedback loop where you are constantly exposed to standards that are difficult or impossible to meet. This isn't accidental, it's optimized. Insecurity keeps you scrolling because it creates tension. You see something that makes you feel behind, and instead of closing the app, you look for relief through more content. Maybe the next post will inspire you, teach you, motivate you, or explain what you're missing. The algorithm uses this pattern to its advantage, feeding you a mix of aspiration and inadequacy that keeps your attention locked in. You become emotionally invested even when the experience leaves you drained rather than fulfilled and not. Her layer of this manipulation is how algorithms reward visibility over depth. Loud, flashy outcomes spread faster than quiet effort. This skews your perception of what matters. You start believing that if something isn't getting attention, it isn't valuable. That belief slowly erodes patience, discipline, and long-term thinking. You begin to crave quick wins, shortcuts, and external validation because that's what the algorithm constantly places in front of you. Over time, this environment trains your brain to seek comparison and approval rather than progress. You may start questioning your own path, not because it's wrong, but because it isn't being reflected back to you through likes, views, or comments. The algorithm doesn't measure meaning, growth, or fulfillment. It measures engagement. And engagement often comes from emotional discomfort more than peace or clarity. When you realize that your insecurity is profitable, you stop treating every feeling of inadequacy as a personal failure. You see it for what it is, a predictable response to a system designed to amplify doubt and desire. Your attention is a resource, and where you place it shapes how you think, feel, and act. The more intentionally you protect it, the less control these systems have over your confidence, your timeline, and your sense of self. Feeling behind is often a sign of unclear goals, not failure, and this misunderstanding causes unnecessary stress and self-judgment. When you don't have a clear definition of what success looks like for you, your mind naturally borrows definitions from the world around you. Social media, culture, and other people's achievements step in to fill that gap. Suddenly, progress is no longer measured by alignment or growth, but by comparison. You feel behind not because you are doing poorly, but because you are chasing moving targets that were never clearly yours to begin with. Clarity creates direction, and direction creates momentum. Without it, even meaningful effort feels scattered. You may be working hard, learning new skills, improving habits, or overcoming personal challenges, yet still feel stuck. That feeling doesn't come from lack of movement, it comes from lack of measurement. If you don't know what you're aiming for, you can't recognize when you're getting closer. Progress becomes invisible, and invisibility is often mistaken for failure. Unclear goals also make success feel urgent instead of intentional. When you don't know where you're going, every success story you see online feels like a reminder that you should be somewhere else by now. This creates pressure to rush decisions, copy paths, or pursue outcomes that don't actually fit your values. The result is exhaustion, frustration, and a constant sense of falling short even when you're capable and improving. You start reacting to life instead of designing it. Another reason unclear goals create the feeling of being behind is that they blur priorities. Everything feels equally important, so nothing gets your full focus. You may start many things and finish few, not because you lack discipline, but because you lack a clear hierarchy of what matters most right now. When progress is spread too thin, it feels slow. And slow progress in a comparison-driven world quickly gets labeled as failure. The moment you define your own goals, the emotional weight begins to lift. You stop asking how fast others are moving and start asking whether your actions align with your direction. Small wins become visible again. Effort regains meaning. You realize that being behind only exists when you're measuring yourself against someone else's destination instead of your own plan. Clarity doesn't guarantee instant results, but it replaces anxiety with focus and turns confusion into purposeful movement, which is something comparison can never provide. Offline progress is slow, quiet, and invisible online, which is why so many people underestimate their own growth. Real improve 'em. E&T rarely comes with dramatic moments or instant recognition. It shows up in small decisions made consistently over time, choices that don't look impressive from the outside but slowly reshape your life. Reading instead of scrolling, practicing a skill after a long day, saving money instead of showing success, or saying no to distractions in order to stay focused. None of these actions generate likes or applause, yet they are the foundation of meaningful change. Because this kind of progress isn't visible, it's easy to assume it isn't happening. Social media trains people to associate movement with proof. If there's no post, no update, no announcement, the brain registers nothing. But growth doesn't need an audience to be real. In fact, most transformative progress happens when no one is watching. Skills compound quietly. Confidence builds through repetition. Discipline strengthens through routine. These changes don't trend, but they endure. Another reason offline progress feels slow is that it unfolds in real time, not edited time. There are pauses, setbacks, plateaus, and moments where nothing seems to change. Online, those parts are removed. You see only the before and after, not the long middle. When you live in the middle of your own journey, it can feel frustrating and underwhelming. You question whether you're moving at all, even though every day of consistent effort is pushing you forward in ways you can't yet see. Quiet progress also protects you from pressure. When growth is private, you're free to experiment, fail, and adjust without judgment. You're not performing for validation, you're building for results. This creates resilience. You learn to rely on internal standards rather than external approval. Over time, this makes your progress more stable because it isn't dependent on motivation or recognition to continue. The danger of overlooking offline progress is that it can lead to unnecessary discouragement. You may quit something valuable simply because it doesn't look impressive yet. But just because progress is invisible doesn't mean it's insignificant. Roots grow before branches appear. Foundations are laid before structures rise. The work you're doing in silence is shaping outcomes you'll see later. When results finally surface, they may look sudden to others, but you'll know they were built slowly, patiently, and intentionally long before anyone noticed. Reclaiming focus and discipline breaks the illusion because it shifts control back into your hands. The feeling of being behind thrives on distraction, scattered attention, and constant external input. When your focus is divided between dozens of voices, opinions, and images, your mind struggles to stay anchored to what actually matters. Discipline begins where distraction ends. The moment you intentionally decide what deserves your attention, the noise loses its power over your emotions and self-worth. Focus creates clarity, and clarity dissolves comparison. When you know what you're working toward and give it your full attention, other people's timelines become less relevant. You stop reacting to every success you see online because you're too busy building your own. Discipline isn't about rigid control or punishment. It's about protecting your energy. It's choosing long-term progress over short-term stimulation, even when no one is watching and nothing feels urgent. One of the most powerful ways discipline breaks the illusion is by restoring a sense of momentum. When you consistently show up for a few important habits, your brain starts associating effort with forward movement. This counters the helplessness that comparison creates. Instead of feeling stuck or behind, you feel engaged. Progress becomes something you participate in daily, not something you wait to happen. That sense of agency is deeply grounding. Reclaiming focus also reduces emotional volatility. Constant exposure to social media keeps your nervous system overstimulated, bouncing between inspiration, envy, fear, and motivation. This emotional chaos makes it hard to think clearly or feel satisfied with your own path. When you limit distractions and spend more time on intentional work, your emotional state stabilizes. You become less reactive and more reflective. Decisions improve because they're made from clarity, not pressure. Discipline also rebuilds trust with yourself. Every time you follow through on a commitment, no matter how small, you reinforce the belief that you are capable and reliable. That self-trust is the opposite of the illusion that tells you you're falling behind. When you trust yourself, you don't need constant reassurance from outside sources. You measure progress internally through consistency and alignment, not through comparison or validation. Over time, focused effort compounds into visible results, but even before that happens, something more important changes. Your identity shifts. You no longer see yourself as someone chasing other people's outcomes, but as someone steadily building their own. The illusion loses its grip because your confidence is no longer borrowed from what you consume, it's earned through what you do every single day. In the end, the feeling of being behind is not proof that your life is off track, it's proof that you've been looking at your journey through a distorted lens. Social media magnifies moments, compresses timelines, and rewards comparison, but none of that reflects the true rhythm of growth. Real life moves differently. It unfolds through patience, clarity, focus, and quiet discipline. When you stop measuring your worth against edited highlights and start honoring your own process, pressure turns into purpose. You realize that progress doesn't need to be loud to be real, fast to be valuable, or visible to be meaningful. The moment you reclaim your attention, define your direction, and commit to consistent effort, the illusion fades and your confidence returns, not because everything is perfect, but because you are finally aligned with your own path. Good luck as you continue building your life at your own pace, trusting your process, and staying focused on what truly matters. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to reflect, grow, and move forward with intention.